Welcome to another very exciting show with our special space guests. We are going to have some really fun with our guests. They're sharing with us that the dream of space oddity can become real. So dear space friends and space enthusiasts, those who always dreamed of putting their suits and helmets on, now's the time, as today's amazing companies and experts are paving the way to public access to space. A little bit background info. The Space4Women Show's mission is to support UNOSA Space4Women initiative. The show's purpose is to empower and support and to contribute to the UN SDG goals, addressing SDG 4, quality education, and SDG 5, gender equality. UNOSA Space4Women supports the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space with a particular focus on the empowerment of women in developing countries. Today's Space4Women Show Series 23 is dedicated to space tourism with our beloved guests, Mrs. Jane Poynter, our co-founder and co-CEO of Space Perspective, Mr. Thomas Reemer, founding partner and joint CEO of Space Hero Media, and UNOSA Space4Women mentor, Mrs. Sara M. Langston. She's an aerospace lawyer, assistant professor of spaceflight operation at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Our interactive discussion today is also to learn about how do we define space tourism? How does space tourism relate to the SDGs? How do we approach space tourism to be inclusive? My name is Hien Yun today, and I'm your host today. So without further ado, I'd love to open the show with Jane Poynter as first panelist.
Yes, hi there, Hien, and hi everybody. And I wonder, Hien, if we might start by playing the video of what we call Spaceship Neptune, which is our vehicle that we are starting test flights of next year that will take thousands of people to the edge of space. We're really working to make space as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. So if you wouldn't mind just playing that animation, I think it'll give people a really good sense of what it is we're doing. You can see the picture behind me. Gives you an idea of a different kind of spacecraft.
For some of you who don't know Jane Poynter, she is a rare female space entrepreneur, Biosphere 2 crew member. She's an author. She's also a speaker, a co-founder of co-CEO of Space Perspective, a human spaceflight company. Also co-founder and founding CEO of Worldview, a stratosphere technology company providing persistent flight with its Stratolite. President of Paragon Space Development Corp, developing spaceflight technologies with hardware on most human spacecraft. The author of The Human Experience, 2 years and 20 minutes inside Biosphere 2. I'm going to play and give you a video. Wow, shivers every time I see it.
Thanks for playing that. So I think that gives you a sense that we are using space balloons instead of rockets for our suborbital flight vehicle, the first vehicle that we're going to be bringing to market. And The reason that we're using space balloons is because it affords an incredibly gentle flight, right? So we're going to space at 12 miles an hour. So this is a completely different experience than if one is going on a rocket. I'm sure going on a rocket ride will be the most stimulating experience of anyone's life. What we want to do, though, is really have people in a sort of relaxed environment. They'll be in shirt sleeves environment in our pressurized capsule. We're going up above 99% of the atmosphere. The sky will be completely black. You'll see the curvature of the Earth. And that way you can really absorb this incredible experience of seeing our Earth in space. And the initial flight will be about 6 hours long. It takes you 2 hours to get up to the edge of space. We're thinking 2 hours at the edge of space and then 2 hours to come back down again. And the reason that we started Space Perspective goes, all the way back to my time when I was living inside Biosphere 2 back in the 90s. In the early 90s, 8 of us went inside what we called Biosphere 2, the idea being the Earth is Biosphere 1. And we lived in it for 2 years and 20 minutes. And during that time, we had the most extraordinary experience of being viscerally a part of our biosphere. So we knew moment by moment that our oxygen was coming from the plants around us, that our CO2 that we were breathing out was going into the plants to make our food, and we were eating so many sweet potatoes that we were turning orange, quite literally, so we were literally becoming part sweet potato. So this incredible experience really gave us a sense of the scale of our planet, that you could really think about our planet as a planetary biosphere that we all are a part of. And it turns out that this is very similar to the kind of experience that astronauts have when they go to space and they see the Earth from space and they see our incredible planet without borders, the whole thing you've heard about, right? The thin blue line of our atmosphere, and suddenly realize, wow, this is not a very big planet that we all live on together, hurtling through space, all in the same direction on this beautiful spaceship Earth that we inhabit. So this is what's driven us to really develop this incredibly accessible way to go to space. And so we're super excited to have launched this company publicly this year, in the middle of this year, and we'll be starting test flights next year with an unpressurized capsule. We have lots of fun things planned with that. And we'll be launching from Kennedy Space Center right here at NASA in Florida, which will be really awesome and exciting. And we're several years out from being able to take all of us up to the edge of space. Probably towards the end of 24 is when we'll actually be launching our commercial operations. I think that gives you an encapsulated sense of what we're doing. And I would say that, as a company, the UN SDGs are actually really at the core of some of what we're doing. And so we are sort of attempting to incorporate as many as we can organically into our company, whether that's through embodying them. So for example, this is really the only near zero emissions way to get to the edge of space, which is really exciting. And as a company, we really want to be net zero carbon emissions. And we also really take gender equality super seriously. Obviously, as a female entrepreneur, that's obvious. That's an obvious one. But also, I think, UN SDG 16, which talks about sort of the promoting peace and sustainability and all of that, that's really at the core, right? That's what we're doing with having people really experience our Earth in space.
Oh, thank you so much, Jane. Is there an age limit to join, and how do we join? Is that, I think we can sign up already by email? Or
yeah, so that's right. And so right now you can sign up to hold your place in line. We haven't officially announced our ticket prices to fly with us. You know, we are still going to space. So at the moment, we think the ticket price is going to be around $125,000, and we'll be working to bring that down over time. What's exciting for us, though, is that we, you know, when we think about inclusion for space flight, it's not only the people that can go. And we could talk about all day about the really awesome things that we could do up there, you know, because we've designed the spacecraft so that we can have events at the edge of space, right? We can live stream events from the edge of space all around the world. So I think your mind can go wild about all the kinds of crazy things we can, and incredibly important things we can do from up there to really draw attention to some of the issues of the world. But the other thing that we can do is involve people as much as possible. So even on our flight early next year, which is you know, an uncrewed flight, we're going to be involving school kids and artists and scientists. So there's lots of ways that we can include people, inspire people with human spaceflight.
So what age is it they can join?
We don't have an age limit at this point. That's right. That was your original question. Sorry about that. So we don't have an age limit at this point. I think the way to think about it is if you can get on a commercial airline, you can get on this. That's how we're thinking about it. That's where we hope we'll end up with the comfort and safety of this vehicle. That's our aim.
Okay. You also accept weddings and all of these things?
Absolutely. Yes. We've already got, you know, a fairly large number of people that want to have major life events at the edge of space, whether that's for weddings or birthdays or even proposals. Yeah, you bet.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for your presentation. We'll get back later in the second half of the show, asking you actually about your journey as a woman, how you entered the space industry and the challenges you had to overcome. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is going to be Kim. She's speaking for Space Heroes, a media company. On behalf of Thomas Reemer, she's speaking. Thomas Reemer, he is a leader in the information technology and media industry with over 25 years of experience. Initially as a music manager and event organizer, he then moved on to work as an entrepreneur for artists such as Prince and George Clinton, as well as clients such as Sony and Universal. He was co-founder and CEO at the first e-commerce platform for musicians, artists. First with 88TC88, he created the first legal distribution platform for digital media publishers and labels in China, which had exclusive content deals with Universal Music and Sony, amongst others. I call Thomas the space bono. The floor is yours, Kim.
Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are all having a beautiful day in your corners of the world. My name is Kim Masharia. I'm the Community Operations Strategist at Space Hero, and I'm here to talk to you today about our bold and ambitious media project that we're trying to bring to life.
There you are.
Great, thank you. Can you hop over to the next slide, please? Awesome. So Space Hero, what is Space Hero? It's the world's first ever global casting show. So we're searching the globe for everyday citizens from all walks of life who, just like us, all have a deep love for space exploration. So once they've been selected on this show, these lucky citizens will embark on the journey of a lifetime, and they'll have the chance to realize childhood dreams. So essentially, the winner of Space Hero will be launched into Earth's orbit, and they'll get to live aboard the International Space Station for up to 10 days. So leading up to this incredible adventure, the winning candidate will receive training from professional astronauts. They'll have the chance to prepare experiments and engage in the first of its kind international space cooperation. So this goes far beyond the typical notions of space tourism. Obviously, it's not something we've been able to put together on our own. We're actually really excited to be working with partners like NASA, Axiom Space, and our production company, Propagate. So we're planning to launch our space mission in 2023 with our lucky space hero. So first, let's get into why we're doing this. Next slide, please. So fundamentally, we believe space should be accessible to everyone, not just astronauts and billionaires. And we want to kick down the barrier standing between normal people going to space by providing an opportunity for anyone from any background to become the first globally elected space explorer. So they'll get the chance to take part in the mission to the International Space Station, ultimately bringing space closer to home and making an aspiration of this nature feel just a bit more tangible. So we're aiming to reinvent reality TV by creating a multi-channel experience and offering the biggest prize ever to the biggest possible audience. But education is also at the heart of our mission. And we'll be creating a multi-channel experience, again, that'll be fueled by curiosity, passion, and thought leadership. And most importantly, they'll be making a big contribution to the space industry. So as you see here, we're also aiming to unite the space community in a unique way through media. So on this mission, Space Hero aims to organically foster international cooperation and partnerships in a way that revolutionizes the present relationship between both the space industry and the media industry. So this will enable us to not only highlight the importance and history of spaceflight, it'll also allow us to put a spotlight on the benefits of space-based services and technologies and what those benefits can have on our present world. Go over to the next slide, please. There we go. So we're aiming to widen the playing field in space exploration. A global entertainment offering like Space Hero has never, ever been done before. And so we're going on an extraordinary journey and we're searching countries across the globe for heroes. And we're doing this to make an inspirational and truly inclusive show that's as entertaining as it is educational. So unlike a number of other space projects, a contestant's home country doesn't affect their ability to participate in the show. It doesn't matter if the contestant's home country doesn't have space flight capabilities right now. The winner of the show could very well be the first person from their country to travel to space. Not only that, we're also proactively working to make the show as diverse as possible. So our final 24 contestants will actually be competing on the show in a series of challenges and exciting events. They'll be made up of 12 men and 12 women. And half of this group will come from the developed world and half of them will come from the developing world. So again, this is our aim, to keep the playing field open. We want to widen the playing field for who has the chance to go up to space. And so by doing this, we aim to uniquely unite space enthusiasts from around the world in a truly democratic way, which is really historic when you think about it. And we actually have the tech to make it happen, unlike some previous attempts. So not only that, our founders have developed meaningful partnerships with key industry stakeholders in both the private and public sector. So again, that kind of speaks towards what Jane was saying about the SDG 17 regarding international cooperation. That's something that we're trying to incorporate on every level of this project. To top it off, our launch provider has actually made phenomenal strides in the field of human spaceflight. And we are thrilled that they've decided to embark on this journey alongside us. And we have also developed a network that has provided us unique advantages that we believe other space media projects have lacked. And that was in part the reason why they weren't as successful as we are aiming to be. The next slide. So I just want to wrap up by telling you guys how you can get involved with this project. So I'm sure you guys think it sounds exciting, the chance to have everyday citizens, not astronauts, not billionaires, get the chance to experience space tourism. So if you're watching this, I'm guessing all of you guys have a deep, again, love for space exploration. So you guys are probably great candidates for our Space Hero Insider program. So we're actually running a ambassador program that will give space enthusiasts from around the world the chance to connect with each other, learn from each other, and also connect with thought leaders in the space industry. So insiders will be with us for every step of the journey, and they'll even be able to directly influence things on the show, like what challenges do contestants do. They'll also be able to host events in their local area, obviously when we're allowed to hang out together again, and they'll get to mingle with a host of other minds in weekly, fun, engaging meetings. So information for those applications can be found on spacehero.me. And just for your reference, applications are open right now up until October 22nd. And the first week of November, we'll let folks know if they've been accepted into the program. And the program will formally begin on the first week of December. And just so you guys are aware, this is only our first cohort of ambassadors. We'll actually be having another round of applications next year, closer to when the applications for the actual show will be open. So another way to get involved. Yes, students can participate. Absolutely. There's no age limit currently for the Space Hero Insider program. I do believe you have to be 18 years old to apply for the actual show. But however, you can totally be involved and integrated into our community no matter what age. So again, if you fancy that you want to come up to the show, you can sign up to our newsletter at spacehero.me, and you can stay up to date on all things related to Space Hero. And the application again is found there. And you can also follow us on Space Hero, at space_hero_media on Instagram, and stay up to date on everything that we're doing, and again, how you can stay involved. Because it's never been a more important time to launch an initiative that focuses on global collaboration towards bettering humanity and our Earth. And we hope that you guys will want to join us on this ride there. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Kim, for this. You guys are real space heroes, you know. Thank you so much, and congratulations for going public with that. Our next speaker is going to be Sara Langston. She is our official UNOSA mentor. Sara is an assistant professor of spaceflight operations at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Can someone please mute yourself there? If you're not speaking, please mute yourself. Thank you. Spaceflight, she's a spaceflight operation Aeronautical University, and also an aerospace lawyer, practical atheist, and US Army veteran with a technical aviation background. As a consultant, she also provides strategic advice to government agencies on private industry, on space application, on commercial human spaceflight. Dr. Langston holds a PhD in history and philosophy, specialization in public international law, space law, and a space studies certificate in physical science from the International Space University. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. All right, so the first thing that I wanted to address was, what does space tourism mean? I know that we have talked about it already in the presentation, and and it's been already raised in commercial space applications and space dialogues. But what does it actually mean from a regulatory standpoint, and also how are we approaching it from a market perspective? There is, to start with, no universal definition of space tourism. It is a term that we use colloquially. We all have some kind of idea of what it means. And there was a legal definition that was offered back in 2004, which basically means any commercial activity offering customers direct or indirect experience with space travel. That was never adopted from the legal community side, because there is a problematic aspect to that definition, and it is very broad, so it's not something that can be implemented. However, it does provide us with a conceptual idea of what we're talking about, and we've already had 2 presentations on different activities that constitute space tourism within that concept. The same thing that we have to look at is with what does space tourist mean, right? So we have the tourism, which is the activity, and then we have the individuals that engage in that activity. And this is important to note from a legal and regulatory perspective, because law doesn't govern the space domain per se. It governs the actors and the activities. So who are the people involved, and what are they doing? And that's what's going to be regulated. And so we can look to US law as kind of just a blueprint or one example of how countries may look at space tourism and space flight activities from commercial or non-governmental entities. And we have 3 categories in the US. You're either a government astronaut, you're either a flight crew from a launch operator, so that would be the non-governmental launch operator, or you're a space flight participant. So these are kind of the broad categories. You're either government, or there's 2 possible categories for non-governmental entities. Either you're part of the flight crew, or you're the spaceflight participant. So regardless of what you're going up into space for, these are actually the terms that we use. It's also important to note that you sometimes hear about people going to the ISS as space tourists. There is an intergovernmental agreement that governs the ISS, and that specifies that sponsored individuals to space and the International Space Station will be spaceflight participants, which is similar in concept to how we have it for the commercial space flight as well. There's lots of other terms that you can hear, and obviously every company can choose their own terminology and the names that they want their individuals to be called to go to space. And I think that's wonderful because it shows innovation and creativity and different approaches to getting to space, but there may or may not be legal significance. So private astronauts, for instance, there's no legal significance to this title because we have 3 titles under the regulations. So just to clarify some of those points. There's also many different types of activities. So law is going to govern the actors and the activities, but we're going to look at what are some of those activities. And obviously there are space activities that you can do on Earth. I don't know if my picture panel is getting in the way. Have you seen everything? If I minimize it, then I may not be able to see everybody. Okay. So we have space-related activities that happen on Earth. Sometimes this is referred to as terrestrial space tourism, and this can be spaceport activities, going to observe a launch, as well as space camps and so forth. So it's basically any engagement with the space, with spaceflight technology, artifacts, operations, services, and things like that on Earth. There's also a concept of atmospheric tourism, the high altitude flights. We can look at stratospheric balloon flights within this category. Then there's suborbital flight, and suborbital flight obviously is a flight that goes up to the edge of space, comes back down, but it fails to complete one orbit around the Earth. So we have parabolic flights and micro-G flights that fit within this category. And we're not going to get into the question of where does space begin and airspace end, because that's a legal debate that's been going on since the end of the 1950s, and there is no uniform consensus on that question. So what we're looking at is using functionally the Baum-Kauman line, which is around 100 kilometers or 62 miles. And that's kind of the functional definition we're going to use today, but that's not a legal or an official definition. And then we have orbital flights to, it could be to the Earth's orbit, to space stations in orbit, or even to the moon. And then we have interplanetary transportation, which would be to other planets, so such as Mars or perhaps asteroids. So these are there's many different space flight profiles, trajectories, and architectures, and they all all have different requirements, and they all provide different experiences. So this is, again, when we're talking about access to space, we're talking about how do we open up experiences, which can be a wide range of experiences that allow for individuals to engage with the space. And looking at, when I was thinking about how does space tourism in particular apply to sustainable development goals, I think there's general consensus here that obviously has implications for education and gender equality. In order to get involved in space as an employee or as an entrepreneur, you need to have some kind of expertise and background to contribute to the space industry. So obviously that's going to come from education, that's going to come from an exclusive workforce. But it also can you can also look at industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and see this as this category as both needing the input of gender diversity, but also gender diversity contributing to the development and progress of industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So I think these are some of the main categories, but I wouldn't exclude commercial or private human space flight from any of the other categories under the Sustainable Development Goals. I think all of them might have indirect implications and also benefits for the other categories. Here are some examples of different industries and actors. The one on the left column is going to be activities and actors that are directly engaged with the spaceflight activity itself. But then we also have supporting industries that enable and allow for spaceflight to occur, but they're not directly related. So creating a nexus between these industries and allowing for people who may be STEM related, or maybe they're not STEM related. Maybe math isn't your thing and you still want to be involved in spaceflight, and I'm speaking from experience. But there are lots of other ways you can be involved in the space industry that isn't necessarily as an engineer or a scientist on that side. But here are some examples to just give you some ideas. We have spaceflight operations itself. This goes to the launch provider and ground support services. We have the spaceport operations itself, the human factors, elements as to training, qualifications, education, and gear and equipment, additional infrastructure in the surrounding area, safety-related services and facilities, and just to think. I want to encourage you to think broadly of what some of these things mean. When we're setting up spaceports in remote areas, that's great for spaceflight because it minimizes the risk to population density areas. But at the same time, we also have to think about what's the natural environment. And I know, for instance, at Kennedy Space Center at NASA, part of the safety crew's job is to actually remove birds and other wildlife that actually do climb onto the launch pad. So there's lots of things that we can consider that are going to be implicated with the spaceflight activity. Security as well. But on the supporting industry side, we have manufacturing, we have software and IT, we have insurance, business, accounting, law, media and advertising, who's telling the story, who's reporting, and also how are we getting social engagement with regards to space activity. So this is all part of the space industry, even if you may not see it as such. We also have need for medicine and pharmacology experts, especially when you're opening up the manifest to basically anybody to be able to fly. And there's a lot of people with pre-existing conditions, or perhaps they're taking medications, and there's basically, from the regulatory standpoint, there is no regulation on this for the spaceflight participant because the government just doesn't know. We don't have enough data to be able to form those regulations. So we need experts to help us in that regard. And there's, of course, hospitality, travel, tourism industries, education. You can go up into space for education purposes, arts, entertainment, and then you might even have people in fashion that help contribute to the development of spacesuits and space gear for individuals who go to space. So it's I want you to get the idea that's a very wide, open, interrelated industry, and that it doesn't act in isolation, but it also takes the support and contributions from analogous and supporting industries. And just some ideas of how can we ensure that space is an inclusive domain. I think part of it is the mental part of opening up our mindset to recognizing the benefits of diversity and to innovation in general. And obviously spaceflight is a very innovative activity, but it's also opening up the mindset of how do we, what do we do? How can we do it? Obviously I showed you some of the spaceflight profiles before. There's a wide range of activities here. So who can do this? Well, pretty much anybody can do it. And why should we do it? I think that's a very good ethical question we should be asking ourselves as well. And that's, part of the creativity and the innovation does sponsor solutions for life on Earth. So I think there is an interplay between what we do in space and how we can bring that back to Earth and how that changes our human experience and understanding, and also our creative solutions for things that happen. So I believe these slides will be made available to the audience members. Is that true, Kian?
Yes.
Okay.
The recording and the presentations will be made available for.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. So I don't want to go through all of these. I can let you read them. I would say that the biggest challenge for me, from my perspective, and how do we ensure that space is an inclusive domain, is not so much the big ideologies. I think we would all agree that discrimination is bad and that inclusivity is good. But what does that mean in practice? How do we employ it in practice? Is that through making sure that the hiring practices of space industry companies are inclusive? Does that mean that we ensure that we are opening and encouraging STEM-related activities or other space-related activities in education to be open to everyone and not just one gender or perhaps people just from one culture versus another? I think there's a lot of work that we can do on the ground to make sure it's inclusive and it's not just a high-level policy concept.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for this amazing presentation. We actually have an upcoming show on diversity with a ESA diversity officer. I didn't even know such thing exists, a separate role as a diversity officer in space, Thank you so much. I'd like to divert back now and open the discussion for the panelists on how did you actually enter this industry. You know, as our job here is to empower girls and women. We have a lot of mentees. They're 19 years old, in their 20s, and looking at, you know, starting their own company. You know, if you, Jane, may perhaps start how you got curious about space, what challenges you had to overcome, and what advices would you give young girls to start their own space company?
Well, there's a lot in there, Hien. So I was just writing down the various components of your question there. So, you know, I was one of those kids who read sci-fi under my blanket at night with my flashlight. So I have been rather inspired and drawn by this incredible vision of humanity and life living far beyond our planet since I was a kid. It just has been something that has really drawn me. I think it's a really powerful idea in every sense. So, you know, with that, I grew up in England, and it didn't really occur to me that I could actually be part of the space world. And frankly, I got into space completely by accident. So I was involved in a couple of really awesome projects. And now we're talking a while ago. This is in the 80s. You have to kind of wind your mind back to the 80s if you were alive then. So you have to wind your mind back to what was going on in the 80s. And, you know, we were just beginning to wake up to, you know, as a species, we were really beginning to wake up to the effects we were having on our planet on a global scale. I was involved in a couple of environmental projects. One was doing ocean research on a research boat. And so I was on this boat for 6 months. I sailed across the Indian Ocean and up the Red Sea. And then I was on a cattle station in Australia. And you're thinking, what on earth does this have to do with space? Well, these are both very remote locations. And it turned out that I had accidentally walked into a training program for what became Biosphere 2. And Biosphere 2 was, in its early days, really had sort of two goals, two targets that it was aiming for. One was to be a prototype space base. You know, how can we live on other planets for extended periods of time in a sustainable way? And ultimately, we are going to need a biosphere of some sort to live a really long time on or colonize Mars. And then, of course, the other one was, you know, how we understand more about our planetary biosphere. So I completely by accident ended up on the Biosphere 2 team through these projects. And so I think, you know, from there, I then started, you know, Paragon, and I started all these other things. So, you know, I think, you know, I sometimes hear young people trying to track their career forward, like in 10 years, I want to have, you know, conquered X, Y, Z. Great, I love that as a driving force, but for me, that I don't understand that thinking. For me, it's about the mission. It's, you know, what are we trying to accomplish? What is the driving force behind, you know, what gets me up in the morning so that I can go do this incredibly difficult thing of being part of a team that is creating the world's very first new biosphere, or creating the very first space balloon tourism company. I mean, these are really difficult things. And you have to be driven by a deeply held passion for the mission that aligns completely with your values. If there's a clash, it's so hard to get up in the morning and really throw yourself into it. So, you know, if what you're saying to yourself in the morning is, ooh, I want to be an entrepreneur, be careful. I'm telling you, as somebody who has lived the entrepreneurial life for 30 years, it can be very hard at times. It's not an easy road, that's for sure. It's, of course, an incredibly satisfying road, but you have to be driven by a real inner drive to do something that you feel is completely meaningful and that you believe the world needs, because most of us at the end of the day truly are not driven by money. There is that goal for a lot of people, but really when you get down to it, that's not really what drives us. What drives us is the mission, the why, the passion for what we're doing.
Thank you so much for that. What is the one advice you would give someone? The one advice, if you do it again.
That's my advice. My advice is you have to really connect with your passion.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you have to connect with it. You hear that a lot, and I really think that's true. Yeah. I think it's, for me, anyway, that's what, as an entrepreneur, that's what supports the journey. That's what creates the journey.
Absolutely. I don't know why the entrepreneurship is celebrated as love and light all day on social media. Behind the scenes, you know it, you have to dig through a lot of dirt and come out with a smile. Totally agree. Yeah. How about Thomas Reemer, the co-founder? How did you enter this space industry? I know you work with Deborah, your other co-founder. Maybe you can share your own space story, how you ended as a male, quite late actually, the space industry, right? Do you want to unmute yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we still haven't entered the space industry, right? Because we are approaching a lot of these things purely through the media perspective. But what we do understand is passion for something, and what we do understand is lifelong learning, and what we do understand is opportunity. And these things come together, and the space industry is also a testament of that. And we have understood, on the journey of Space Hero that, clearly has been a long journey and is a complicated one, a complex one, but we understood that anybody we have met from the space industry is very passionate about what they do, because the rewards of what they're doing are very much in the future. And, a lot of these things that people in the space industry do are not tangible, right now. They're not tangible tomorrow. They're not tangible, in 2 or 5 or 10 years' time. But it's all connected because space is brilliant. It, speaks to the complexity of who we are. We are brain, we are heart, and we are body, and all these things need to be aligned. And in that sense, we Space Hero itself, the whole organization, benefits from these things. Takes the energy and channels that into something that we want to give back as an energy to a lot of other people. And you talk about diversity, you talk about equality. Our organization actually lives that. Debs and I, we are living a testament of how this could work on the top level. And the whole organization, are people from all over the world, from all age groups and expert levels, because we believe in giving people chances, right? Even if, your performance, won't be as great first time around, but the second time it will be if you're prepared to learn. And, that also, I think, is something that people who want to enter anything that is not state-driven, anything that is not driven by the desire to have security and a good job. If you really want to fulfill a passion or a calling, then you have to brace yourself for these things. But that, will ultimately be worth everything. And, we are talking about this from a perspective that is highly Western and very luxurious, right? Because we have a great life. Other people in other places on this planet, don't even have the chance to think about these things. And for them, it's about creating opportunities. It's about creating paths that they can take and, come to the same or interesting conclusions, because ultimately entrepreneurship fosters education, and entrepreneurship fosters, structures that people really can fulfill their selves and make the world really literally a safer place. And that's what we are all about.
Thank you. Totally agree. Entrepreneurship, I believe, are the ones that are going to solve many, many problems. How about you? How did you enter the space industry?
I entered space industry actually from an international perspective. I grew up overseas. I didn't come to the States until I was 17. And so as a third culture kid, I already had that global perspective and interest. And I was interested in becoming a pilot. And I tried to get into flight school, and I couldn't afford that. And then I joined the military. So I joined the Army at 17, and I worked on attack helicopters, and I did get to fly as a air crewman on an Army helicopters, and that was kind of my intro into the technical side of aviation and what flight was all about. And then when I got out, I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, thinking that segued with my previous military experience, and just found out that the math was not for me. It wasn't my forte, and I wasn't going to be happy pushing myself through that. So I went to my backup route, which was law, and I found aerospace law in law school. And I started working on international law issues as well as aerospace. And then I continued my education. And so I kind of joke that I got every degree around math that I possibly could in regards to space and human space flight. So that's human space flight is kind of my niche area, but I worked on lots of different issues regarding space. Obviously liability is a big issue, whether it's for satellites or for humans. So that's a big part of what I do as well. So I would say that there's lots, as far as advice goes, I would say there's lots of pathways to space. If you want to become involved in space, you can. But I want to echo what Jane and Thomas both very articulately indicated, that you have to have passion, but then you have to have something more than that. Passion itself is not enough to sustain you. You have to have dedication. You have to have tenacity to keep going when it's rough and not easy. And you also have to stay open and flexible to what your role in space is and it could be. We know this is a very dynamic industry, and jobs change, the technologies change, they evolve. And so you have to, the idea that you might have for what you want to do in space may be different 5 years from now. So building a very good core skill set is going to be important for anything that you do and contribute to space. But ultimately, I think by going to space, you prove yourself to be a massive, brilliant problem solver. And that skill set of problem solving can be applied to everything, not just space flight, but can be to your everyday life, to solving problems that we have on Earth using space spin-off technologies or applications and so forth. So stay open, stay flexible, and then become that problem solver.
Thank you. This is great advice. And I'd like to open the Q&A now.
The first question is from Anna Christina. It was for Jane, and Jane answered her on the Dropbox, but I would love to get the answer to our audience. So the question was, what is the maximum altitude for the Space Perspective spacecraft?
Yeah, thanks for that. So our spacecraft that we call Spaceship Neptune goes initially to 100,000 feet, which is 20 miles up. It's above 99% of the atmosphere. So once you're up there, it's completely dark out. It is completely black sky, which is certainly what I want to go see.
Yes, thank you, Jane. The second question was from Janine, and it is for Thomas. It's what media platforms is Space Heroes advertising or promoting the project on?
It's a good question, because it totally, comes at the right time, because we're in the middle of the negotiation of those platforms. Exactly. We are talking to platforms, we're talking to the streamers, we're talking to broadcasters. And of course, we want to make the show available to as wide as an audience we can get. And luckily enough, there are global audiences right now. When the show was conceived 12 years ago, there was only Facebook who had a vaguely similar and global audience. Now there are many. And that's great, because we have the choice, and the show will find a home where most of the people on this planet will be able to see it. And you can also enjoy the app and enjoy the content on the app. The app will play a very big role in Space Hero, because people will apply through it, they will interact with the show with it, and they will vote through the show for the contestants on the show through the app as well. And the app will be launched next year, and it's free for all. And we are, hoping to create a platform where people can communicate about all the topics that we are discussing here as well, right? I mean, essentially, Space Hero is just, creating a spotlight where we will put topics under that will reflect the SDGs, but also reflect, other general questions of life that are fundamental for the planet's well-being, and will shape a lot of people's thinking for the future, especially the younger generations, right? Because it's ultimately in their hands to keep it up. And the ones that have been born with technology, my kids are 20 and 22, and you can't tell them, they have so much information that you can't really fake it for them, and that's a good situation. And there are hundreds of millions of kids in that situation too, and we just want to connect them, so that they can exchange their views and be strong together for the future.
I believe for your initiative there's an age limit, of course, right?
Yeah, you unfortunately, right? I mean, for the first season, you have to be 18 plus. And my mother, who's 83, she said she would absolutely fly. If she dies, it doesn't matter because we're already grown-up kids, so that's fine. And but in seasons, coming seasons, we would also hope that we will be able to send a family up to, and either the ISS or to the moon, to set a precedent that you can travel with children, that it's fine and safe. And I mean, imagine the first kid that comes back will be, an inspirational, responsible, inspirational person for the whole wide world. It will tell the story, it will tell the overview effect, and it will have all of this firsthand experience, and it's going to be incredible.
Thank you. Next question, Malak.
Answer that. The question is, do laws that govern the actors in space tourism, involved in space tourism, originate from the countries that actors are citizens of, where the spacecraft departs from?
Yes, so this can get a little bit complicated, but it's this is the joy and the fun for space lawyers, I think, is that we have an international space law regime based on international treaties. So that gives every state the right to engage, to use and explore space. But as private citizens, we derive our rights not from the treaties, but from the states that we're citizens of. So in the US, for instance, and I'm located here, so I'm just going to use the US as an example, but it could be any country. The US puts out regulations, and then as a US citizen or as a company be acting in the US, you would have to comply with the US regulations. So yes, every country would have their own regulations that would apply to non-governmental entities and individuals engaged in space.
It's an interesting situation, mind me jumping in, for the International Space Station, of course, right? Because it's run by a partnership. And that partnership represents, some countries, but for, of course, not the majority of countries on this planet. And, since, a lot of NASA is financing this, the majority part of the ISS, and, NASA falls under US law. In that case, we the space tourist or, private astronaut, as they call it now correctly, falls under laws that come in for NASA through the United States.
Thank you, Thomas. We have more questions perhaps from the LinkedIn chat.
Yeah. Yes, we have more questions. We have a lot of questions, actually. The other one is from Pankaj, is from LinkedIn. And his question is how it varies from someone with a background of network and security, because it's part of industry actors in infrastructure development and related safety, and also supporting industry actor. So what would be the best approach? Actually, the question, maybe it could be formulated. It's how the space tourism would relate to network security, if I get it right, because it's a part of actor in infrastructure development and related to safety within the space tourism.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one,
So I
because
I mean,
go ahead,
I can speak. Yeah, so I think if I may not be understanding the question correctly, but for example, as we're flying Spaceship Neptune, it can fly autonomously, and it is in continuous communication with the ground through satellites and other sort of networks, right? So in that regard, we better have security. We don't want somebody hacking in and doing something weird with our vehicle, because that would be completely unsafe. So in that regard, absolutely, there is a safety component to that. If that answers the question in any way, I'm not sure, but.
Well, I can just add that from the US regulatory perspective, the FAA is the delegated authority to regulate launch, reentry, and spaceport activities. And we do have a regulatory requirement that the launch operator is to ensure the safety and security and to ensure that the spaceflight participants do not pose a threat to safety or security. So
yeah, and just to also oh, sorry, Sarah, I thought you were finished.
Oh, good, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that we at Space Perspective are regulated just like as a spaceship, as a suborbital flight. So we're regulated under that exact same regime. So we have to comply to all of those as well.
Yeah, actually what's interesting, if we want to get into it, and maybe Jane, you can speak a little bit to this as well. The regulations are very specific with regards to making sure that spaceflight participants, for instance, don't have any weapons or explosive devices that they bring on board. So security is a big component of the regulation, but there is no prohibition on drugs or alcohol, either being served on board the spacecraft or being served to spaceflight participants beforehand. And we know the US from state to state each state within the US has a different perspective perhaps towards drugs and alcohol as well. So I think that will be interesting to see how safety is informed by that, and also how safety informs those activities.
Thank you. We have time for one more last question.
Actually, Mikhail would like to ask a question directly.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Michal Ziso. I'm an architect from Israel and part of the Space4Women team. My question is for Thomas. The Space Hero program sounds like a wonderful combination of Big Brother meets actual analog habitats meets space kind of sci-fi. My question is, will the participants, even the ones who those that don't win and get to go to space, will they get the experience of space in some sort of analog way through this show? Because I think it's a wonderful thing that could bring people closer to the space industry from participating and from watching it. And I was wondering if part of the show is to have the actual place being some sort of an analog habitat.
Absolutely. We call it the Space Village, right? And the Space Village will be the place where the 24 contestants are going to live together for 3.5 months and find, the most worthy person, to be the space hero. And I mean, you can imagine that this person who, is important because he has or she has the buy-in of the whole planet, right? When they go up and come back, everybody would want to hear about this experience. And the connection between the audience and this person is the difference, between current astronauts and, whatever they do in space. It's only a niche audience interested in that. When you take this to a mass audience, that's where the extra layer of attention comes from. And, your question is brilliant because, of course, we thought about this as well. Because when you take it upon yourself to apply for these things and you enter into this, then, you will have to take a very close look at yourself and who you are. Because it's not about physical fitness, right? And it's not about knowing the most things. Ultimately, it's about, who are you? Are you collaborative? Are you empathetic? Do you understand what's going on? Can you read people? Can you work together with people from other nations, across language barriers? And in that way, everybody will experience, what it takes to be an astronaut in the space village, all the challenges, all the, things that people will go through and learn will be structured around that. But we are also thinking about ways of encouraging and enabling the 23 runner-ups basically to have a significant role and in the space industry and maybe become astronauts themselves, because ultimately the space tourism is one thing, but space travel for everybody is something else. It serves a purpose, whereas space tourism, of course, is a leisure activity. But space travel serves a purpose, and the more people can do it, the better for us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone today. Thank you for our panelists today to show us that dreams can become true. Thank you for paving the way. Wishing you all the success. So thank you everyone. Stay safe and great success.
We need to take the pictures for everybody.
We could, yeah, we could on gallery view, but I can probably go offline for that one.